Hey guys, welcome to another episode of On Air with me, Owen Richards, your host, and I am joined today by John Richardson. John is the founder and CEO at ExP, and he is joining us today to talk about coaching SDRs. Generally, what is coaching? How can it be done well, effectively, productively? Why should we be doing it? All things coaching for SDRs, a topic close to my heart, and indeed John's, as I know this is his passion, his business, and the route that he's seen lots of gaps in over the years in the organizations that he's worked with. We'll get into topic in a minute. John, first and foremost, hello, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Very well. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, really good to have you on the show. Looking forward to getting into this topic. We both sit in that world of SDRs, so I think we're going to come up with some good stuff in here. Before we do that, there'll be people watching and listening who know you, no doubt. But I'm really sorry to say there probably will be some people that don't. So for those who don't, perhaps you can just give us 2 minutes. Who's John? Who are ExP?
Absolutely. So my background is running SDR teams. Most recent team that I ran personally was at New Voice Media until 2018 when they were bought by Vonage. And my favorite things to do when I was running an SDR team were to bring people into the business, train them and enable them and see them progress and be successful. And with frustrations that I'd had with experiences in that process, both from recruiters and then from how external trainers and coaches had worked with us, I felt like there was an opportunity to do it slightly differently. And so I founded ExP in 2018, and we work with software businesses to help them build SDR teams, train SDR teams, and coach them. So that's it in a nutshell.
Brilliant. You didn't even need 2 minutes. You're a pro. Love it. Right, let's get into topic because that's why we're here. Coaching SDRs. Right, let's start with the basics. What's the difference between coaching an SDR and training an SDR?
Yeah, fantastic question. And for me, I think training is giving them the knowledge they need to do what they need to do, and coaching is helping them to actually do it. So you can't necessarily hold hands and make the calls with them all the time, every time. Otherwise, you'd maybe hire different people for your SDRs. But they need to be trained. They absolutely need to be given the knowledge. But we all have seen that forgetting graph that is shown where something like 97% of what is learned in training is lost within 3 days, or however quick it is. And so coaching is that continuous, whether that's every day, whether that's every week, whether that's however regular it is, but that continuous enablement that helps them to apply the things that they have been taught rather than them new knowledge that they need to, masticate on and bring into their daily life. So it's that consistent enablement, really.
So let's just take that to a practical example. So sitting in a classroom, getting trained on how to write a cold email. Like, that's a training session. What happens after that training session that turns it into effective, where they actually get to the point where they're doing it, and that becomes the coaching piece? Walk me through some examples of good coaching off the back of that training.
Absolutely. So I think the first thing is giving them an opportunity to try it, right? The gap between being trained on something and being able to practice it needs to be as short as possible. So that can be informal role play practices. So here's a prospect, everybody try and write an email to that prospect. And coaching starts as part of that training, right? So then reviewing some of those emails together, discussing what's good, what's not good, how closely aligned they were to what was trained. But then that can't end in that session. It's then given a little bit of time to implement that, to go and find their own prospects to write emails to write cold emails to, and reviewing both the results. So what happens as a result of these emails? What are the things that coachee and coach can learn from the true application of that training? But then also editing and analyzing where they maybe have fallen short of what was trained, or where they've excelled, to reinforce the behavior and adapt the things that could have been better. And so that can be done with a group, right? So you do training and then you do a group review where you bring people together. That can be done one time, but it has to be followed up on. It has to be a go away and practice, go away and do, and then we come back and review. And that process shouldn't really ever end.
Yeah, and I think that's a really poignant point there that coaching isn't done. I think that's one of the reasons. I don't know. Love your take on it. Why people are scared of it, because we're in a more and more commoditized environment now, where we're expected to deliver an outcome, a result, as quickly as possible. Speed is important. We've got to ramp people faster. We've got to get our booking. We've got to book our meetings and hit appointments, our targets every week or every month or whatever that might be, every quarter. And yet coaching is sometimes hard to validate, hard to constitute, hard to turn into something tangible. Bar, I've spent this time coaching. Trying to get in the head of the people that are avoiding coaching, putting it in the too hard basket, and maybe explore why it ends up there. What is it that's causing them to undervalue it?
I think one is that it's not necessarily undervalued. I think it gets forgotten rather than, and maybe that's the same thing, right? Like you don't get things that you value highly. But I think often it's forgotten because other things feel like they're more in that urgent and important bracket.
Yeah.
Whereas coaching never feels urgent. It never feels urgent to sit down and forget about how close you are to your target today. Forget about how many calls you've made today. Forget about all of those things that are high pressure, high urgency, and just say, well, let's talk about how you did on something that may have happened one day ago, may have happened half an hour ago, may have happened 4 or 5, 6 days ago, but can actually drive important and valuable difference over everything that happens next. And so coaching is one of those things that I think it's just really hard to drive urgency for. I think the other thing is that there's sometimes resistance to it from reps, and I've thought about this in different contexts, but in the basis of your question, the times where I see reps that start to avoid coaching, it's usually one of 3 categories. Either they've started to get uncomfortable with what they're being asked to do, and they are fed up of showing up to coaching sessions where they get told that they're not doing the thing that they've said they should or agreed they should. And so it starts to be difficult both for coach and coachee, because the coachee doesn't want to be coached anymore. So they become almost immune to that coaching because of discomfort, fear, unwillingness to progress. The second one is that for one reason or another, the role has changed. So someone who, especially in maybe a small business, is maybe doing a hybrid role, which that's a whole other conversation of whether you should have hybrid roles or not, but maybe has a hybrid role. And so they're starting to move towards something that doesn't require the same type of coach or the same type of coaching. Or finally, someone who has kind of evolved beyond the coach that they have. And that happens from time to time. There's a coaching process that someone can follow for all sorts of things. But for example, maybe they've moved from an SDR role to an account manager role. And so the conversation changes, the types of calls change, the type of engagement needs to change. And it might be that they need a specialist coach for their new role. But all of those things can make a manager feel uncomfortable or a coach feel uncomfortable with their coaching. Because they might have some imposter syndrome. Is it me? Is it that I'm doing the wrong thing? They might feel like it's a failure on their part if these things happen, when some of them are completely natural and completely normal things to happen. But all of them, again, it's very easy to find something that's more urgent to slip in of that coaching.
Do you know what? I've not thought about that before. I think you've hit the nail on the head there, that there's always something that shouts louder than coaching, isn't there? Or usually multiple things. And therefore, the accountability isn't necessarily around it to get it done. The deadline isn't there in the same way as a lot of the things that we have in our work life. And as a result, those that care least about it will drop it, eliminate it, not do it at all. And the impact of that can be fairly dramatic, I would have thought. I'm keen to just, I guess, if you look at the best practice SDR manager, what percentage of their time would you like to see them coaching versus in reports with leadership team, justifying strategy, looking at sequences and cadences, looking at the data supporting what they're doing, looking at trends in the market, one-to-ones, all this kind of stuff that they still have to do, right? But the coaching piece needs to make up a certain percentage, surely.
Absolutely, and I think percentage-wise, it's hard to say. Personally, personally, I think if you're not having a coaching session with each individual SDR every week, you're either stretched too thin, as in you have too big of a team, or you're managing multiple teams. If you can't commit at least that one-to-one session that is purely focused on helping them get better at their job, and not, well, you haven't made enough calls, or you haven't done this, or you haven't done this, or promotion, then you're at that edge of not having the right structure in place to look after that team. And so the percentage number is hard, right? Because there's all sorts of models you can have that provide coaching to that SDR, because you could have a one-to-one A to SDR ratio, and therefore the A can take some of that coaching burden. There's problems with every model. But there's always benefits to different voices. And so if you can make sure that every SDR is having at least one-to-one coaching session a week, that's a good start. It doesn't have to be you as the SDR manager. You can spread that with other members of your leadership team, of your surrounding team. But I think that's for me the minimum standard.
I think it's a really nice benchmark that you can use universally as well, can't you? That, to your point, if you're worried, if you've got 8 people in your team, then you put in half an hour, 45 minutes, an hour of coaching with each of them. That works. The moment you get to 15, if it's 15 hours worth plus the follow-up and admin around it, it's half your week, and all of a sudden you're thinking, oh geez, I've got too big a team. And perhaps that's one of the reasons we like to keep ratios at a certain level. And I, again, I'm keen that you must see teams with all different ratios around SDR manager or team lead through to SDR. Where do you see that sweet spot? I know we're off topic a little bit, but I'm just intrigued.
I think, again, I don't think there's necessarily a sweet spot. What I tend to see is you'll have, I think more than 8 is probably too many. Unless you've got a really strong matrix coaching program in place, where you have either managers and coaches as separate roles, whether you have external coaches, we talk about all the time, or whether you have kind of other team lead coach type roles, or player coach, not player manager, but player coach roles within the teams. But yeah, I think if you're responsible for everything and you have more than 8, you're probably in a tough spot. But often it's more challenging and it's harder when you have a small SDR team, right? Maybe 1 or 2 SDRs, or maybe even 4, and their manager is your VP of sales.
The gap's so big.
AEs, right? And so you end up with this challenge, because the person who could do the coaching is absolutely a great person to do it. They've got all the knowledge, all the experience, all the insight to give. But when we talk about urgency and things that become more urgent, end of month, end of quarter, deals that need support on, deal reviews, all of that stuff just piles on it. But I think the key is making sure, again, that you've got the infrastructure. And I think it's more about what do the SDRs need, what do they need, rather than have we got the right balance. And that gives you options, right? Because then you can look at promoting SDRs to team lead roles, where you can then think about, are we providing what we need for all these SDRs? Yes, we might be, with team leads or with external coaches or with different things to support them. But I think that's a better way to think about it than, right, we should have X number of SDRs per manager. Obviously, it's different in an organization like yours, where you've got to think about that structure in order to build a business. But when you're building one SDR team, I think it's a lot about making sure that you're giving them a fair chance at success. And that you're not falling into the trap of, well, we hire adults, we pay them like adults, they should perform like adults, because it doesn't matter whether you're in theory right when it comes to running a sales team. You've got to be actually right. And I think you can really fall into a trap of, they should know how to do this, which is just a route to a failure. And it's not that you're wrong, it's not that you're incorrect. You just got to do what it takes rather than what you think it should take.
We were laughing the other day, telling an old story, how one of our highest performing, if not our highest performing SDR in our team, turned up on the first day of her job and didn't know how to turn her computer on. We made that massive assumption that they should know how to do it, right? And I've only had it once, but it turns out she's an exceptional salesperson, but needed showing how to turn a laptop on. But it's stuff like that, isn't it? You just, the basics, that you can't make those assumptions in the day to day. I'm just going to circle you back about 4 minutes. And most people are going to think, oh, has Owen been paid to ask John this question? But I'm going to ask you it anyway, because I haven't. But you touched on external coaching, and I know that's part of ExP's offering. So regular listeners will know that we're not here to plug. We're not here to just talk about what John and ExP do. But I think in the nature of this conversation and in amongst the topic, it's an interesting point, because to answer the question, you said, well, it depends on what else you've got going around, whether you've got SDR managers and internal coaches or external coaches. And I think most people would naturally go external training. Yeah, I get it. Right. But external coaching, how does that work? Because surely coaching is a part of understanding somebody and knowing them well and understanding their levers and the way they work and that kind of stuff. And how can you do that externally? So I think not in the interest necessarily of selling EXP, although it will do that, but in the interest of understanding what that looks like. I'd love to just get a bit of an overview.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I'd argue that training needs more connection to the people you're training.
I agree.
Because in some ways, because in a training session, you have a group of people whose attention you have to capture immediately.
Yeah,
it's like a discovery call, right? When you show up to a discovery call and there's 6, 7, 8 people in the room, that's never a great sign.
Yeah,
It's never an indicator that it's going to be a great call. And so, not that that's impossible, and it's not a problem that trainers struggle with. But I think the reality is that yes, absolutely, you have to get in bed with the people that you're coaching in terms of reviewing their calls, listening to what they do and say, the conversations they have, reading the emails that they send, looking at what they do on social, because that's the whole point. It's not about helping someone change their, at times it is about helping them change their perception of themselves, but more often it's about helping them change the reality of what they do. So, without talking specifically about what we do, you've got to listen to calls, you've got to read emails, you've got to have that ability as an external coach to really get stuck into what is happening in real life.
Yeah.
And then actually, in some ways, it adds a nice benefit, because you don't really care about their overall results. You care about the performance with a little p of how they perform in the actions that they do.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's one of the key things to coaching. And one of the things that I'd recommend any organization to do is to have multiple voices coaching their reps, whether it's external or internal. There's conversations I can have with anyone that's interested about that. But the reality is, it's about having different voices, so that anytime you play a call back to a rep and say, look, did you hear what went wrong there? Or can you hear what happened there? Or what do you notice about that section? That they're not immediately in fear for their job. That they don't feel like that coaching moment is a threat to their employment, but is an opportunity for them to develop. And that can be a really difficult, blurry line when the person that coaches you is the same person that manages you. And so that's not that managers shouldn't coach. They absolutely should. And they should build that relationship where the people that they're managing know that their job is to help them be successful from day one. But that's why it's also useful to have those other voices that can add that extra layer and almost hold the activity, performance, accountability to a higher standard than someone who's also telling you, here are your KPIs, here's how you've got to perform, here's how you've got to act around the team, here's how I've got to help you behave and understand the business.
Of course, because there's a really good point in there as well around, as a coach, it's not just about coaching sales skills, it's about coaching stakeholder management skills internally, professionalism, some of the stuff that, I'm going to sound really old now, but, kids coming out of university, going into their first SDR role, we now know that over 80% of open SDR roles in market at the moment are advertising where they're happy to take people with no experience, no or less than a year's experience. Whereas if you go back 10 years, that was the other way around. Fewer than 20% were saying that was, it was 3 years experience, 6 years, all that sort of stuff. And so what we've got is people that are younger with less experience going into the workplace, which means naturally they haven't learned some of those life lessons that you learn from being in a workplace. And then they're doing it remotely a lot of the time and learning it even slower. So our role as an SDR manager has moved from, and in fact, let's just point out that some SDR managers will be those people too nowadays because they have to progress so quickly, but they've moved from from sales coach into life coach, sales coach, professionalism coach, behavior coach, whatever you want to coin it out. And it's a very different role now, isn't it?
Absolutely. And again, I think that's why it's so important that no matter how big or small your team is, that you have a structure for different voices to spend time with those people. Because whether you've got a great manager or not, there will be things that they will feel more comfortable speaking to someone on the side of their manager than they will their manager, or vice versa. Things that they'll feel more comfortable talking to their manager about than the A's that they work with, or the coach they work with, or the VP of sales, or whoever that is. And I think that having those different access points and different voices just becomes so fundamental to asking yourself that question as a sales leader or as a CEO or whoever. Am I making sure that we're doing everything we can to help our team? Because you're absolutely right. I mean, I have countless stories, and look, the world's changed, but there was one time where we hired someone and the culture in the business that we worked in was that, except for on dress dance Fridays, it was shirts tucked in. It was, you look smart on his first day, comes in looking a little scruffy. I'm far more casual today than he was then. But it was just right. I need to have a word about that, and it's not a big deal, but just a little bit in the ear. Make sure your shirt's tucked in. Right, here we go. Good. And it's stuff like that I don't care. That didn't change my perception of him, but he might not have known that. I need to make it really clear that it's like, hey, no, this is fine. I'm really excited that you're here and you're going to smash it, but I just need to talk to you about some of these things, and you're not in trouble. You're not in trouble. I've got to accept.
It's a learning opportunity.
Absolutely. And that comfort level with you're hiring people because of their ability to do things over time, not that they're the round person today. It's a good place to get your head.
Love that. Let's just touch on something around the difference between coaching people in individual one-to-one circumstances and within groups. And I know, again, sometimes you fall between training and coaching, because we typically train in groups a lot more. But coaching can be effective in both circumstances. Kind of one-to-one is needed. I absolutely get that. But a blend of that versus coaching in groups can be really powerful. And I'm just keen to get your narrative around each of them and the benefits of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So one-to-one coaching is far more about lifting the specific individual to where they need to get to. And it absolutely, I would say it's always crucial, but it's absolutely crucial when you've got a blend of experience in your team. So that might be your new cohort of SDRs that you've hired. That could be that you hire one a quarter or whatever that looks like. Absolutely, you need that one-to-one, because you pick up on the details that seem insignificant but can make a big difference. Right? It's the what is being said on the phone by that individual. And you can lose that if you just do group coaching, because you need to listen to every reps call. And there's a lot of talk about making sure you listen to the right calls and the wrong calls and all this kind of stuff. But the reality is, whatever call you listen to will be the average of that reps call. Because the chances of you finding their best or their worst are so low. But if you do it across the team, that's not the same. It's not as true, because if you listen to one call from a team of 5 SDRs, you'll pick the average of that rep rather than the average. So then, to flip that, the advantage of group coaching is that you can lift everyone at the same time. You get the benefit of people learning some of those leadership skills by commenting and listening to and discovering what other people are doing, both good and bad. And if I think about my first SDR team, the things that I now hear them say when I speak to them or when I see them post on LinkedIn or all those different things are things that we talked about as a group that I didn't teach them. Weren't together as a group as they would review each other's emails, as they would listen to each other's calls, they would potentially sometimes in quite a stern and aggressive manner critique each other. But it provided a platform where, in some ways, as a manager, it can be easier to get them to say some of those harsh words to each other. You said, and there were many a group coaching session that I've been in, both as a manager and as a coach, where I'll hear a rep comment on someone else and I'll think, I would sugarcoat that a little more than there, and yet it
Yeah.
gets received so much better because there's no hierarchy.
Mm.
It's just we're all trying to get better.
Straight honest feedback. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I think it's about having them both. I don't think it's an either or. Not that you asked it as an either or question.
No.
It's an either or question. It's blend it together. It should be a program, right? It should be like a rhythm where people want it and they look forward to it and they embrace it. And the more, like my recommendation is, the more you can create an environment where people are excited to bring their calls or bring their emails to those sessions, and actually have them lead those sessions where I'm going to present to you my emails, I'm going to present to the group my calls, and I'll take back. It just accelerates that group think and that group learn together far more.
I think also, and you know, please like challenge me if you think I'm wrong on this. The world has moved to hybrid, primarily remote in so many organizations, rightly or wrongly outside of that. What it has done is taken that group coaching that happens organically without you having to do it by intent away. So where we can do one-to-one coaching, realistically, whether you do that virtually on person or in person, it can be effective both ways. And look, I'm a great fan of in person for all sorts of reasons, but you can be effective doing that wherever. But that group coaching piece, I think, as an SDR manager running a team, and you and I have come from a similar background. We started in selling and then ran a team and then gone on to do our own thing. When I was running my team, there was nothing better than being able to hear over the other side of the office one of my senior reps coaching one of my junior reps without even realizing they were coaching, or one of my junior reps. It doesn't even have to be senior or junior, just one of my reps going, "Oh, can you tell me what you did there and why you did? Oh, right, yeah, okay, that makes sense." And they're learning from each other through osmosis, and I've had to do nothing other than create a culture where they're happy to share, and which you do as a good leader naturally anyway, I think. So that has gone because those conversations aren't happening. They don't overhear people on the phones. They don't look at the screens and go, "What's that you're doing there?" It's gone on the most part. We've now got to create and manufacture, which means we're working harder to get the same outcome. Yeah, I'm not sure that everybody's realized that and created the mechanisms that are in place to ensure that group coaching, which would otherwise have been done organically, and I think you could just undervalue it if you don't see it, actually you've got to still have it in the mix.
Absolutely. I would agree that it's gone, and I think the thing that makes me uncomfortable is that I think it was going a little bit anyway, because more and more when I'd spend time in offices, there'd be people that go off into calling booths to make them, rather than calling as a group and just calling together. And some of that is an uncomfortable product of office design, right? If you have the whole sales team there, your A's aren't going to want to make calls in the office because the SDRs are on the phone, and the SDRs, if they're slightly too close together, and depending on where your office is based, that might be just how you have to have it, right? You might not have the square footage to keep a little bit of space between them, but it was being lost anyway. For me, it's just an absolute necessity to create the environment where that happens. And I'd say that's a higher priority than making sure they all call in a group together. It's about, you can craft those opportunities and those sessions far easier than you can make them all make calls in the office.
Yeah, I agree. I think the world has definitely changed. I'm keen to move on to what you see as a good coaching attribute. So we talk about coach. Well, you got to coach. Yeah, do coaching. Spend loads of time coaching. Great. What is good coaching? So what does a good coach look like? What are the sorts of things that they should be doing? And what are the absolute do nots? Because I think we see people trying to coach, and perhaps they're telling. I don't know, but they're certainly not being as effective as they would like to be.
Absolutely. I think the first one is that they don't think it's about them. I think you can really easily fall into a trap of thinking that coaching is about you proving your worth. Like if you're a more junior coach who's trying to establish yourself, you can think you've got to prove that it's worth its time. And so you can fall into that telling trap of I have to give value rather than I have to learn something and I have to uncover something. It's amazing to me how similar a coaching session should be to a discovery call, in that if you only spend 2 or 3 minutes of a half an hour just coaching call talking about recommendations, that's a good coaching call, right? That's a productive use of time, because together you will have uncovered 27, 28 minutes worth of insights and ideas and thoughts. And so, yeah, you've got to absolutely remember and believe and act like it's not about you as the coach. And that's both positively and negative. Like, it's not about you getting your voice out because you think you've got some good things to say, or to try and prove that you have good things to say. I think the second thing is that you've got to really care about the people you're coaching more than you care about their outcome. It can get really easy to fall into a trap of, I've got to tell you what I think you should say, or I think you should believe, or I think you should feel. When actually it's okay if out of a coaching session someone says, do you know what, I don't think I'm enjoying this. I don't think I'm enjoying what I'm doing. That insight is amazing. And having that comfort level with somebody so that they can tell you that, and it's not an immediate, well, if you don't want to be here, then you shouldn't be here. But okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's spend time on why you're not enjoying yourself. Is it because you don't know what you're doing? Is it because you are in the wrong role? Is it because actually there's something else you'd rather be doing? Or is it because you're just feeling, you know, having some mental health challenges at the moment, or having whatever challenges, life challenges that are making work hard for you? And so I think those two things would be the kind of biggest things. You don't have to know everything to be a coach.
No.
You have to know enough that you can understand and you can empathize, and you're not going to direct them on the wrong path.
Yeah.
But I think the key is far more about the attitude towards it than it is the. I think the big no-nos are that it turns into a training session, and that doesn't mean that you can't get a whiteboard out and talk through frameworks. It doesn't mean that you can't add any insight, but the purpose is about that person and that person getting better. And so, if you can identify a training need, it might be that you say, look, let's park that, and we'll maybe spend some more time going through that. But actually, let's just review some of the things that we talked about. Can you remember this that we talked about? How can we apply that to what we're working on today? And also that you don't make the person feel, I don't quite know how to word this. It's not about not making them feel uncomfortable, because sometimes they should feel uncomfortable, right? They should feel like they're being asked questions that pry and that test them a little bit, but it's not about it being a test. It's about testing how they feel about what they're doing, testing how they think about what they're doing, but not because there's a right or wrong answer. There obviously is right and wrong answers.
Yeah.
But it's not about saying the wrong thing. It's about helping learn and uncover and discover where we're at, so that we can build on that platform. Yeah, I think the worst thing you can do in a coaching session is that criticism rather than critique.
And there is a difference, right? It's interesting. I talk about, there's probably 4 points I talk about most when we talk to our SDR managers. One is, the worst thing you can do is be agreeable. You know, don't agree with everything, because if you go in there and you say, right, okay, let's listen to that call. What do you think? Yeah, I thought it was good. Yeah, me too. You know, and you're positive about everything. You've got to challenge, and you've touched on that there, which is around, you've got to challenge them. And then even sometimes if you do agree, challenge their thinking, because that creates the mindset where they get used to asking, could I have done that better? Could I have done that differently, to themselves? So that's one. The other is the ability to listen. I mean, we talk about it in sales, and not many people are good at it. We mostly talk our way through things, but the reality is it's even more important in coaching, isn't it, that we can actually listen. Because the danger, of course, is that we make assumptions. We don't listen. We hear maybe, or we go through, and you know, if you're coaching an SDR team, you're going to hear the same 10, 12, 15 things over and over again. But the real problem might be something underneath. I've got a GP friend who says, we use the first 8 minutes of every 10-minute GP appointment talking to them about what they came to see us, and then we use the last 2 minutes talking about what they actually came to see us for, because it's the reality. And we go through that process knowing that most people, and we ask, anything else you got going on? Anything else you got going on? And it's the same here. What they bring to the forefront at the beginning of that conversation may not be the real reason they're bringing that there. And the last thing I talk about is being curious. Like, you've got to, it kind of ties in with all that. be genuinely curious. And I think your point there about actually caring, to be genuinely curious, you actually have to care about the person in the room next to you to some degree. And I think some fantastic, really fantastic points. Any comments on those things? Because no doubt you've seen some great coaches over the years.
Yeah, I think I in the spirit of not being agreeable, I want to disagree with one of them.
Go on, challenge me.
I think, yeah, like I find myself asking questions and catching my tone quite a lot. So I'll ask a question, I'll play a section of a call, and I'll be like, so what did you notice there? And I'll realize that my tone sounds like I found something wrong. And I don't think that. I don't think there's anything wrong. I think it's great. I think it's fantastic. I just want them to tell me what they did well. But I found that being quite neutral and is my way of often challenging that. Like, I'm not going to tell you that it was good until you can tell me why it was good.
Yeah.
Because I don't care that you got it right if you got lucky. That's not what I'm here to highlight.
Yeah.
I'm here to say, well done, you looked out this month, fantastic. Which is okay for a manager to say sometimes. As a coach, I couldn't care less whether you got lucky or not. I want to know why you did what you did, whether it's good, bad, ugly, fantastic, terrible. And so I try and often be as intentionally, and again, depending on the person, right? If I know someone's going through a hard time and I hear some amazing things, I may use that as an opportunity to build them up and to build some confidence. But generally, I want them to tell me. I want them to tell me why they thought what they did was good, or why it worked, or why it's gone well. And you can't do that if you say, look, this is a great call, let me play a bit for you. You go with a tone that is, there might be something not good in here, so listen for it. I think with your point around listening, it's the foundation of everything. If you're not paying attention to what is actually being said, you miss so much. And that's the greatest coaching sessions I've both been in and experienced as a coachee and as a coach have been where either I've noticed something that has been said that wasn't meant to be said, or where I've felt myself say something and think, oh, I don't know if I want them to pick up on that. And then the person coaching me has said, tell me what you mean. You said, okay, now I've got to. And that's great because it means that progress is made. And, you know, I remember when I was leaving New Voice Media, it wasn't a coaching session, but it kind of was. It wasn't formal, but I was with Jeremy Straker. I don't know if you've interviewed him. You should. He's cracking. And he said something like, "You sound like you're ready to move on." And I was like, "What do you mean? What have I said? What have I given away?" He said, "Well, just a couple of things you said there make me think that you're thinking about what's next, and you don't think it's here." And that conversation built the foundation for me to now do what I'm doing today. Would never have happened. Would have taken longer to happen. Not have had someone that was listening to that conversation. And so it's those moments of where the nugget is found that makes all the coaching sessions where it's, so what's on your mind? Let's listen to this call. It was good, bad, fine, whatever. Okay, keep doing what you're doing, make these changes, and then we'll speak about it next week. It's the, hang on, it's just clicked for me that I don't know if I understand why I'm calling this type of customer. Okay, right, let's talk about that then. Let's face this thing rather than me sit here and list off why it's the ideal customer profile and tell you why you should be calling them. Let's explore that. So who do you think, like, what do you think you do? What does your business sell? What problem are you really trying to solve? Those breakthrough moments are special.
You know what? Before we head to wrap up, I'm just going to finish on this. There's a guy called Eric who heads up our sales academy, so our training academy here at Air, and he preaches on these three words. He hangs on them whenever he's coaching people and training people, but usually around called examples. And what else? That's what he says. So he'll say, so what went well in that call? Da-da-da. And what else? This. And what else? And he'll keep asking it and keep asking it. And eventually people will get to the point that's most important. And he will not give up asking, and what else? And I think it's a really nice example there of those really powerful questions. I loved your one there. So What did you notice there? You don't even need to notice something yourself. No agenda, very short questions, really open. There's a blank canvas for you to go and paint it. Tell me what you think. And, it goes back to that listening thing. You don't have to have many words, do you? You don't have to have many words to have a big impact. And I think two really, really good examples. John, look, we're coming towards the end of the conversation. Loved hearing your experience and ideas around coaching SDRs and how you do that with impact and effectively. So we talked a little bit about EXP throughout the conversation and at the beginning. I'd love to just get a sense of who do you help? Who can EXP help? What sort of organizations? What sort of people? And if people want to get in touch with you, how can they get in touch?
Yeah, so ideal people that need our help is where you've got somebody managing multiple teams. Mm-hmm. So if you're a CEO of a small software business that mm-hmm. managing the whole business, including your sales team, if you're a chief revenue officer or a VP of sales who has AEs, account managers, and an SDR team under you, or alternatively, if you're scaling your SDR team and you have young managers that need that support to get it right first time, that can some of those experiences and some of that reflection sessions to help them right first time.
And are you a hanging out on LinkedIn kind of guy, or do you prefer an email, or what's the best channel for you?
LinkedIn is 100% the best channel. It's the easiest one to find, and it figures out any weird email spelling. John with a H or without a H, any of that. Just search John Richardson on LinkedIn. Try it both ways and you'll find me.
I love it. John, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us on the program. Really appreciate it. We'll catch up with you soon.